Welcome to this presentation on liquid transfer. Tank pump outs, tank evacuations, whatever you call them, these are often viewed in our industry as one of the most dangerous activities we can perform. We're going to be discussing the safest methods to use today and also the best ways to keep you and your company safe.
My name is Chad Ackner. I'm the Technical Service Advisor for Dealers LP Equipment and the R.E. Michael Company. R.E. Michael has corporate headquarters in Glen Burnie, Maryland, while Dealers LP Equipment has locations in Davenport, Iowa, Louisville, Kentucky, Hickory, North Carolina, Jackson, Mississippi, Dothan, Alabama, and also Memphis, Tennessee. It's important to note that anything discussed today should not in any way be construed to override any of your local applicable codes, any of your insurance requirements, or any of your company policies. Anything referenced today is from NFPA 54 and also NFPA 58.
Part of the reason that you're here today is because of Section 4.4 in NFPA 58 regarding the qualification of personnel. And it basically says that persons who transfer LP gas or are employed to transport LP gas or whose duties fall within that scope of the code shall be trained in the proper handling procedures. It also states that refresher training is required at least every 3 years. Additionally, all training must be documented, and that documentation must be retained.
All propane installations must comply with both NFPA 54 and NFPA 58. Those installations must also comply with your local AHJ, or authority having jurisdiction, which may be a local code enforcement agency or a fire marshal. Company policies must always be followed, in addition to following manufacturer's instructions. Part of the code is to actually follow the manufacturer instructions, whether it pertains to NFPA 54 or NFPA 58. So that is actually written into the code. Always work safely, document everything that's performed during the installation or during the service work, and retain all documentation. A breakdown of the differences between NFPA 54 and NFPA 58 are that NFPA 58 will cover everything from the container all the way up until the outlet of the delivery regulator. Now that may be an integral twin stage regulator or a second stage regulator. NFPA 54 covers everything from the outlet of that very same regulator all the way inside the building.
When we talk about liquid transfer, really what we're talking about is transferring liquid propane from one container to another. This is widely thought of as one of the most dangerous activities in our industry. The goal is to safely empty liquid from one container and transfer it into another container, such as a bobtail. You'll hear this quite a bit through this presentation today, but I cannot stress enough the importance of safety when performing pump outs or tank evacuations. Proper training is essential. A little later in the presentation, we will show a short video on a tragedy that occurred in Ghent, West Virginia in 2007. This tragedy was a direct result of personnel that were not trained properly in how to perform a tank evacuation. Why do we have to pump tanks out to begin with? Why can't we just transport them over the road? Well, in section 9.6.2 of NFPA 58, it clearly states that ASME containers of 125-gallon water capacity or more shall contain no more than 5% of their water capacity in liquid form during transportation. It's always important to check with your local authority having jurisdiction, your insurance company requirements, and also your company policy to make sure you're following all procedures properly. If a container does have to be moved with more than 5% overall liquid volume inside, understand that lifting lugs, when they're designed and attached to the container from the manufacturing facility, are not designed to lift containers with more than 5%. If a container is required to be moved for any reason, it's important to make sure that it's strapped properly beneath the tank on the outside of the legs where the tank stands. There are different ways to transfer liquid from one container to another back into a bobtail, for example. Some work better than others, and the ability to perform them different ways may rely on what type of equipment you have. A word of caution if using a side load adapter to evacuate a container. Because of propane's very low lubricity factor, it's important to understand that damage may occur to your truck pump if a container is evacuated using a side loading adapter. The pump may have a certain period of time where it's running dry with no liquid propane inside to move. Therefore, premature wear on the vanes or the internal liner of the truck pump may occur. Always use caution. ASME containers built prior to 1961 did not have an actuated liquid withdrawal excess flow valve, and they actually may not have any bottom fittings as well. In these cases, when a tank pre-1961 is required to be evacuated, the following steps may need to occur. The tank would need to be rolled on its side, and the liquid withdrawn through the vapor withdrawal valve, or using a unloading adapter, the liquid would be withdrawn through the fill valve. Again, either one of these two scenarios would require the approval of your local authority having jurisdiction, as well as your company policy. Once a container is emptied, there are several ways to legally and safely transport that empty container over the road. Before any liquid transfer operation takes place, it's important that the individuals performing this task are properly protected with personal protective equipment, or PPE. This would include a jacket, work pants, gloves, face and eye protection, and also protective footwear. If using a vapor compressor, a brief rundown of some of the steps taken to do a tank evacuation are as follows. Make sure the tank you're pumping into, or the bobtail most likely, has enough room to take whatever the contents of the tank being emptied are. Always make sure you check the entire area for ignition sources. Set up the compressor, hoses, and other equipment at the recommended distances. Check the motor oil and also the compressor oil of the compressor. Connect the vapor hoses, tighten and also bleed the air from the system. Connect the 3/4 inch liquid hose to the adapter on the back of the bobtail spray fill. Bleed any air from the system if necessary. Install a transfer valve per the manufacturer's instructions to the tank that you're emptying. Connect to the liquid hose and tighten those connections. Slowly open all vapor shutoff valves. Allow the pressure to equalize between the two containers. Then slowly open the transfer valve and other liquid shutoff valves, allowing the liquid to enter the hose, equalizing the liquid pressure between the containers. Leak test all connections and then begin the transfer of product by starting the compressor. Some common vapor connections used on both the tank being pumped out and also the bobtail that you're pumping liquid into are as follows. On the tank you're pumping out, a standard vapor connection would be the 1¼ inch Acme connection. This connection would be placed on the multi-valve, in addition to being run over to the 1 3/4 connection on the vapor connection to the bobtail. The vapor connection between the tank being emptied and the truck or the tank you're pumping into is used not only for vapor equalization between the two containers, but in the case of a vapor compressor being used for a tank evacuation, the vapor connection allows the buildup of pressure in the tank being emptied to force the liquid back into the bobtail. And it also allows for the removal or the drawdown of vapor pressure from the bobtail. So essentially what we're doing is we're pulling vapor from the bobtail, forcing it into the tank that's being emptied, which in turn pressurizes that tank and pushes the liquid back into the bobtail. Common liquid connections and fittings would be a transfer valve, which connects to the check lock adapter, the check lock adapter, which in turn connects to the check lock valve, which is installed in the container, a 3 1/4 Acme by 1 3/4 Acme adapter, which connects to the spray fill on the back of the bobtail, and then of course an 1 3/4 adapter at the end of the hose, which connects to that adapter on the spray fill. In between the transfer valve and the 1 3/4 adapter, which is connected to the back of the spray fill, would be a 3/4 inch liquid hose. The connections to the bobtail are as follows. On the liquid side, connect a 3 1/4 by 1 3/4 Acme adapter to the spray fill. Make sure the adapter is tightened with a J-wrench or a spanner wrench. On the vapor side, an 1 3/4 adapter will connect to the vapor connection. Regarding the connections on the tank being pumped out, on the vapor side, an 1 1/4 Acme adapter gets connected to the 1 1/4 vapor connection of the multivalve. This again is connected to a hose and allows communication between the tank being pumped out and the bobtail. On the liquid side, a transfer valve with a check lock adapter is connected to the check lock valve. A hose will then carry the liquid from the tank being emptied back to the bobtail. Typically, a 1/2 inch hose is used for the vapor connection, and a 3/4 inch hose is used for the liquid transfer connection. Additionally, always make sure approved shutoff valves are used. Typically, when a vapor compressor is used to do a tank evacuation, the suction side of that compressor is connected to the bobtail. The discharge side of that compressor is connected to the tank being emptied. Basically, what it's doing is it's drawing vapor pressure from the bobtail and compressing it or forcing it into the tank that's being pumped out. The higher pressure in the tank that's being pumped out will eventually cause the liquid in that tank to be pushed back into the bobtail. Compressors are available either propane fueled or gasoline fueled. The compressor side is identical. The main difference here is the carburation side of the internal combustion engine, one obviously being used for propane and one being used for gasoline. Each compressor uses a suction side and a discharge side. The suction side draws in propane vapor from the bobtail, and the discharge side discharges it into the container being emptied. As you can see in this diagram, the compressor is placed between the tank being emptied and the bobtail. The suction hose gets connected to the container supplying the vapor pressure, which is the bobtail, and the discharge hose is connected to the container being emptied. Crude compressor instructions are available on their website. It's strongly recommended that these instructions are read and followed carefully. Also important is maintenance of the compressor, making sure that both compressor oil and motor oil are checked before any use. Another option for consideration is a VenturaVac. A VenturaVac is a device that was invented by propane people for the industry. This is a device that weighs about 6 pounds. It uses the truck pump already as it's designed on the vehicle. It also makes it convenient for bobtail drivers to perform evacuations on the route with one person. The VenturaVac includes a venturi inside the assembly which creates a loss of downstream pressure, enabling the tank being pumped out to empty. The VenturaVac includes 3 1 3/4 Acme connections. An 1 3/4 male connection connects to the bobtail hose. Another 1 3/4 male connection connects to the liquid line from the tank being emptied. And also an 1 3/4 female connection connects to the back of the spray fill. Here's an example of a VenturaVac connected to the 3 1/4 by 1 3/4 adapter on the spray fill. Additionally, to the left of that, you'll see where the vapor line is connected. Connecting and using the VenturaVac is quite simple. The first thing we want to do is make sure we're wearing the proper PPE. We want to connect the VenturaVac to the truck spray fill with the 3 1/4 by 1 3/4 Acme adapter. Next, we want to connect the liquid hose from the tank being pumped out to the side inlet of the VenturaVac. Then connect the vapor hose to the truck vapor fitting. Then, once we've done those two things, we want to connect the bobtail delivery hose to the inlet of the VenturaVac. Next, we connect the liquid hose to the liquid withdrawal valve on the tank. After that, we connect the vapor hose to the fill valve of the tank being emptied using a Rigo 3121 unloading adapter. VenturaVac recommends connecting the vapor hose to the filler valve via the 3121 unloading adapter for efficiency purposes. This allows for the best transfer of vapor between containers. Next, once we've pressurized everything, we want to make sure that everything is tight and leak-free. Once we've determined that there are no leaks and it's safe to begin the transfer of liquid propane, the next step would be to engage the truck pump. And we would engage this truck pump at only an idle, which is exactly what the truck pump is designed for. This will result in a consistent flow rate of between 11 and 16 gallons per minute. When the transfer is complete, the truck pump is disengaged. We then want to close all valves, including the liquid withdrawal valve and the 3121 unloading adapter on the filler valve. We then want to bleed off all residual product from the hoses. Once the system is safely bled down and the hoses are removed, the next step would be to install any protective caps or plugs that were originally removed. Finally, we want to pack up the equipment and place it securely back into the bobtail. We also offer a VenturaVac kit. This kit includes all of the fittings and shutoff valves required in addition to all the hoses required to perform a tank evacuation using a VenturaVac. The part number for this kit is VentEvac, VentEvac space KIT. In order to safely transfer product from one container to another, modern propane tanks have a dip tube at the base of the check lock valve inside the tank. This dip tube is approximately 3/4 inches in diameter and sets about 3/4 of an inch off the bottom of the tank. Please also note that anywhere liquid propane can become trapped, the installation of a hydrostatic relief valve is required. In this case, it would be the section of piping between the check lock valve on the tank being emptied and also on the bobtail. Getting the liquid out of a tank has not always been as straightforward. We're going to follow a quick timeline of liquid withdrawal locations. Prior to 1961, liquid withdrawal valves were not installed in ASME tanks. Prior to that, a tube extended to the bottom of the tank from the filler valve. Then in 1963, manufacturers were required to install evacuation valves with incorporated excess flow valves as a separate appurtenance or a separate fitting. Initially, manufacturers installed these in the bottom or in the end of tanks. And then in 1975, due to safety, reliability, and convenience issues, evacuation valves with incorporated excess flow valves as a separate fitting were installed in the top of the tank. As mentioned earlier, these valves include a tube that extends to nearly the bottom of the tank. If the need arises to evacuate a tank built prior to 1961, or if for any reason a tank is not equipped with an excess flow valve, a REGO unloading adapter may be required. Again, these allow the filler valve to be manually opened to remove product. Quick note, if the tank does not have a liquid tube connected to the filler valve, the tank will need to be laid on its side. By using these adapters, and I mentioned this earlier, you will not have protection of an excess flow valve. As always, consult with your supervisor and verify your company policy. The next slide contains a 23-minute video on the tragedy that occurred in Ghent, West Virginia in 2007. This video will automatically play. If you don't have time to watch it right now, please make a note to go to YouTube at some point in the near future and search for Little General Propane, and you will find a video on this topic. This video explains exactly what happened on that day, and in many ways it changed the landscape of the propane industry. In many ways, training and emergency communications were put underneath the microscope and ultimately updated and changed for the better. If your intention is to watch the video today, on some devices it may be necessary to click on the image. If you're ever in the area of Ghent, West Virginia, I highly recommend you stopping by the site where the tragedy occurred, paying your respects, and spending some time at the memorial. If you were able to take the time and watch the video, you now understand the critical importance of the telltale. Telltale is basically a hole that's drilled in the cap of a check lock liquid withdrawal valve to instruct the technician whether it's safe or not to remove the cap. In this case, in the part of the incident in West Virginia, the technician was not properly trained, if trained at all, in the proper function of that excess flow valve. In addition to any training offered on liquid transfer or tank pump outs, please always view the manufacturer's instructions of the equipment. REGO provides extensive information on any of their product line, including check lock valves and also check lock adapters, new and old. The old style check lock valve, the 7572 FC and also the 7580 FC, had been updated to the new style check lock, the 7590U and the 7591U. The new style check lock provides for an easier, safer connection point, and REGO also approves it for permanent use. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the new style check lock on the left with the old style check lock and adapters on the right. Liquid evacuation adapters for both new and old style check lock valves are available. These adapters make it much easier and safer to access the liquid space of a container. Now it's time for some Q&A. True or false? ASME tanks over 125 gallons water capacity can be transported at 80%. The answer is false. Personal protective equipment is referred to as what? The answer is PPE. True or false? Vapor compressors are the only way to remove liquid LP. The answer is false. A blank indicates if the liquid withdrawal excess flow valve is closed. The answer is telltale. True or false? A Venturivac weighs 6 pounds. The answer is true. Thank you for watching this presentation on liquid transfer. Please make it a point to participate in any available training on tank pump outs or tank evacuations. This would include any on-the-job training or field training with an experienced technician. Thanks again and be safe.